Hi, my name is Max, and this is my Zenith project. I wanted my Zenith project to be focused on concept art. I got interested in concept art my junior year, where I focused my explorations project on photo bashing. Photo bashing is a technique where you blend photos into your illustrations or drawings in Photoshop. But this time I wanted to focus on how to use 3D in my 2D concept art drawings. I learned about this through Finney McManus. I wrote my research paper on Finney McManus and how he uses virtual reality sculpting programs to sculpt out scenes and then use those blockouts in his 2D art. And this can help with perspective and proportions and all other things too. And my client is an author, and he needed 3 final paintings for a science fiction series he was writing. He needed a floating motorcycle, spaceships, a fleet of spaceships, and a city. So I'm going to show you my process and my work now. So these are the first sketches I showed my client about the floating motorcycle, and we talked a lot about it, and I figured out early on that my sketches were way off from what he was imagining. So I worked on it again and got much closer, and it was a much more longer design. One of the most challenging things was he asked for vertical wheels on the motorcycle, but the motorcycle is still floating. So you can see in motorcycle 1 and 4 how the wheels are on the bottom of the motorcycle, like a normal motorcycle, but it's still floating. I thought this was really strange. It's because you expect the motorcycle to be on the ground if it has wheels. So what I did was I pushed the wheels further up into the motorcycle, almost as if they were engines. And then the motorcycle could still be floating. And you can see this in the large sketch of number 7. Here I was working on this floating device on the bottom of the motorcycle. We went through a few ideations of that, and we decided to have one large object on the bottom that's pushing the motorcycle up. This is the 3D blockout of the motorcycle. I had to learn how to use a blender for this, and it wasn't that bad actually. For what I'm doing, especially just blocking out shapes and simple things for perspective and proportions, it wasn't that hard to learn. For here, I'm just basically using basic shapes like boxes and spheres and bending them and manipulating them into shapes that I can use to resemble a motorcycle. And as you can see, I just use basic boxes to represent the human riding the motorcycle. This is where I now put the 3D blockout into my painting or pictures. Here I started with a picture and then worked with trying to make the 3D blockout fit in. This is the second part of my process. I'm changing the colors, trying to make the lighting fit with the environment. And then after review with my client, he wanted some colors changed and the motorcycle on the back to be a bit slimmer. And this is the final. As much more purple instead of orange, and the blues hue got changed too. The next project was the flying spaceships. It was supposed to be a fleet. These were the first ideas we were talking about initially. I got some few references and some few sketches I did, and we talked about how it should look like. I did a 3D blockout again of the space fleet, but this time I didn't really use it. I used it here on the bottom left and maybe on the bottom right for those spaceships, but the main spaceship I just painted. This was because it was a front-on perspective, so I think it was much easier to do compared to the motorcycle. I used a technique called backlighting in this piece. You can see how the light is coming from the back, so all the spaceships are silhouetted. This makes it much easier to add detail on. One technique I use to add all the lights and windows is I look for pictures that are bird's eyes view of like a city at night, and when I put it into Photoshop, I turn that layer to soft light, and then the lights blend in nicely with the spaceships. So the final piece was definitely the hardest. It was the city, and this city has this central tower that goes through it, and it's very dense. These were the first sketches I showed him and that we talked about. I tried testing some colors very early on. Nothing really resonated with me. I was trying to look for something that push in it, like finding an idea that speaks out towards me. I then had the idea to use these floating ships in the piece. I wanted to depict the layer that was super industrial. I then did more 3D blockouts. One benefit of the 3D blockouts is definitely changing where the light source is and the angle of the camera. So here you could see how I'm rotating the camera around, trying to figure out what could be the best angle to draw. And I'm also changing the light source and the intensity of the light, because that also plays a big factor in the painting process. So this was the painting I did. You can see the flying container ship. There's people working, and there's the main tower in the background. I was pretty happy with this piece. So I showed it to him like this. I was still in the middle of adding the color. But he said he wanted to see all of the city in one painting. So I did more sketches. They looked like this. So you can see how the city is very dense and has different layers. And at this point, I didn't think that it would be a problem. Initially, I was scared to draw all 5 of the layers at the same time, because I knew how complicated that could get when I'm painting and adding all the colors in. But I wasn't that worried at this point. So I did the same thing, did a block out. These shapes circling the tower are just a simple block out for where the mountains are going to be. And then this is the painting, and I was pretty disappointed with this painting. Mainly because there was so much going on, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. It probably took 3 times as long as the other paintings. I'm not even really finished with this one. There's so much going on between each tier, getting the lighting of the whole environment to fit with the whole city, and then there's supposed to be an island in the front and mountains enclosing it, that all these things made it super difficult for me to actually draw. I'd be super interested to see how a professional concept artist would approach this idea and see how theirs would look like. My challenges were definitely working with a client for the first time, trying to get what they are seeing and imagining onto paper is very difficult. And another tip is just to keep your art very manipulable. So if you need to make any changes throughout the painting process, you can. Like, make sure you can change the colors, make something smaller or bigger, get rid of anything, add something to the painting. That will all be super helpful. I learned so much during this project, and And I think freestyle in my Zenith has taught me I can learn almost anything I want to. There'll be challenges and hardships, but as long as you stick with it, you can learn it. And especially if you focus on what you learned and not the final product, you can always find value in what you're doing. Thank you.